What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about Kings of Pain. Now, Kings of Pain was a small X-Men crossover that was done in the annuals of Marvel Comics in 1991. And really, only 4 annuals: X-Factor, X-Men, New Mutants, and also the New Warriors as well. It was a way to take all 4 teams and put them together to fight against one character who was trying to come back into the world of Marvel Comics. And really, that character was being forced to come back into the world of Marvel Comics. And that would be Proteus. And Proteus is a very powerful character in the world of X-Men comics. And so it took X-Force, X-Factor, X-Men, and the New Warriors to come together to stop him this time. I do hope you enjoy today's full story video. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over the X-Men, but now it's time for us to dive into another X-Men crossover, better known as Kings of Pain. Now, Kings of Pain took place in some of the X titles annuals around this time in Marvel Comics, plus a New Warriors annual as well. Now, with that being said, this crossover is bringing back a certain character that we have not seen in a very long time, and I am talking about the idea of the early days of Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men, the real early days on his run on the X-Men. Now, with that being said, when it comes to this character coming back, they're trying to do something new and different with the character. But something else I do want to mention is that this is not the New Mutant team that you all know and love, because around this time in Marvel Comics, they were doing a transition from New Mutants over to X-Force. And so even though the first chapter is a New Mutants annual, well, they're calling themselves X-Force by this point in Marvel Comics. But they're the first team that we're going to see in this crossover. And so getting into the first chapter for today's video, we do pick up with New Mutants Annual number 7, where we actually pick up with a team better known as the Alliance of Evil. Now, the Alliance of Evil actually used to work for Apocalypse in the early days of X-Factor comics, and we have not seen these characters for a good while now, but these characters are right now attacking a school better known as St. Simon Academy. Now, this school is somewhat important because at this school there are 2 mutants known as Artie and Leech who used to live with X-Factor in the early days of X-Factor comics. You see, when it came to X-Factor, they were going around trying to find different mutants who may need their help to learn more about their abilities or to learn how to control their abilities. And so after a while, when it came to X-Factor, they realized that even though they are able to give these kids some kind of skills with their powers, these kids still need an education. And so unfortunately, when it came to Artie and Leech, they were sent over to this school right here to get that education. Now, when it came to Artie and Leech, they met another kid known as Whiz Kid. And all 3 characters, plus the rest of the kids that X-Factor has saved over the years, had formed a new team called the X-Terminators. Now, the X-Terminators was Marvel trying to have another young team of mutants out there. Unfortunately, it didn't last that long, because right after you had the X-Terminators appear, they went away very quickly, and most of the team went to go join the New Mutants. And so when it comes to Artie, Leech, and also WizKid, they were left behind at this school. Now, all 3 kids, they truly believe they have the ability to stop the Alliance of Evil. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, they are completely wrong. Now, there are 2 other characters with the Alliance of Evil who are new to Marvel Comics. one being Harness and the other one being Piecemeal. Now, when it comes to Harness, their name gives it away very quickly. They have the ability to put someone in a harness. But for Piecemeal, well, he's a tad bit different. You see, what they're doing right now, they're going to different locations to collect a certain kind of energy. And Piecemeal is being used to store that certain kind of energy inside of him. Now, Piecemeal is just a kid, but unfortunately, he's being forced to do this. And so when you have Harness and Piecemeal arrive at the academy, well, he goes ahead and absorb this certain kind of energy. And once they got that energy, they're like, hey, time to leave, let's go. Now, before they do leave, you have Tower, one of the members of the Alliance of Evil, knock out WizKid, Leech, and Artie before they left. And so they move on to the next location. Now, once you have WizKid wake back up, he's in the medical room, but then he realized that Boom Boom and Cannonball are there because when it came to the Exterminators, they used to work alongside with the New Mutants, so he knows them very well, except when he looks around the room, he realized that Cannonball and Boom Boom are not with the usual New Mutants team. And he's kind of like, what in the world is going on here? Because like I said earlier, around this time in Marvel Comics, Marvel was moving away from the New Mutants and going into X-Force. And so you have Boom Boom and Cannonball say, hey, the team you knew are long gone. Meet our new team, X-Force, and meet our new team members like Feral, Warpath, Cable, Shatterstar, and also Domino. We're X-Force. But after you have Boom Boom and Cannonball being able to introduce everyone to WizKid, it's Cable saying, okay, cool, listen, kid, talk right now. We need to know what in the world is going on. You see, when it comes to X-Force, they have been trying their best to chase down the Alliance of Evil. But the problem is, every single time they arrive at what could be the next location the Alliance is going to attack at, they're a tad bit too late. When they arrived, the Alliance had already left, like the Academy earlier. And so for Cable, he's kind of wondering, what is the Alliance truly after? Now, for our heroes, they know a lot of information about most of the Alliance, but not the two newest members, Harness and Piecemeal. And the big question is right now, who are they? But also, what is the Alliance truly after? And so now we have to jump over to Gentech. Now, Gentech is a company, one of the two companies that is going to be really important in this crossover. So when it comes to Gentech, they were hired by a mysterious employer to create a certain kind of genetic material. The problem is, though, they got word that the Alliance of Evil is going around the world to different locations to absorb that same kind of genetic material. So the energy we saw earlier when it came to Piecemeal, well, actually it was not energy. It was some kind of genetic material that was nearby the Academy that he had collected. The same kind this company is also trying to create. And so right now you have the higher ups believing that, hey, what if our employer has somehow also hired the Alliance of Evil? But at the same time, they don't want to believe that. But then we pick up with another company known as IDIC. Now, IDIC is actually a company who had hired the Alliance of Evil to go around and collect that certain kind of genetic material. But they're also working on their own project as well, a containment casing to put all that material inside of it. But the question is right now, what is their end goal though? And so now we have to jump over to Niagara Falls. Now, when we do, we see the Alliance of Evil once again there, but this time they're doing crowd control to push everybody back to allow Harness and Piecemeal to be able to collect another piece of that genetic material. Except right after you have Piecemeal being able to collect that small piece of material, well, that is when you have X-Force arrive. Now, when X-Force does arrive, they are able to take down most of the Alliance with no problem at all. Now, for Harness and Piecemeal, they realize they gotta dip out because their goal was to go around to different locations to collect that genetic material. They were hired to do that. And so you have Harness grab Piecemeal and they jump off an edge. Now you believe, okay, they had just committed suicide or they killed themselves to get away from X-Force. But in reality, Harness has the ability to teleport. And so they were able to get away while the rest of the Alliance got captured by X-Force. Now you have Cable and Domino walk over the tower and say, you are going to tell us every single thing you know about your employer and what they are trying to collect. But on that same last page where we see Domino and Cable about to interrogate Tower, we go to a different location for just a few panels where we see two guys playing chess against one another. Now these two guys, they are the ones who are currently behind everything. And they're playing this game of chess with all the different characters who are so far involved in this story. Now for Cable and Domino, they were able to interrogate Tower. Now Tower does inform our heroes that the Alliance of Evil was actually hired by Gentek. Now what we saw earlier could not be true because Gentek said the Alliance of Evil are going after the same genetic material that we are going after, which means somebody else had hired them. And we saw earlier that IDIC were the ones who actually hired the Alliance of Evil to collect the genetic material around the world. And so Tower had lied to Domino and Cable, but the problem is our heroes don't know that. And so they went over to the building of Gentek and they actually broke into the compound. Now when they get in there, they knock out all the guards. But once you have our heroes get deep into the actual compound, well, they're confronted by the New Warriors. Now, let's talk real briefly about the New Warriors. Okay, so the New Warriors first appeared back in 1989 in Thor number 411. Matter of fact, that was part of the whole Acts of Vengeance story arc. Now, when it came to the New Warriors, they came together because of Dwayne Taylor, better known as Night Thrasher. You see, when it came to Dwayne, his parents were murdered. And so because of that, this man said, you know what, I swear revenge against all crime. And so over the years, he would train to become a better fighter, to become a hero. And so after he reached a point where he believed that he was ready to be a hero, he went out of his way to put together a team of characters who could possibly help him take down crime across the world. Now, the reason why the New Warriors are here right now is because, well, Gentek actually hired the team to protect this place. Here's the problem though. The New Warriors nor X-Force are trying to talk to one another. And so now you have both teams just fighting against each other. Now you do have X-Force and the New Warriors actually fight against each other for a good while. And the only reason why they stop fighting against each other is because the owners of Gentek walk into the room. Now for the owners of Gentek, they say, listen X-Force, we hired the New Warriors to protect this place from the Alliance of Evil. Now for Cable, he says that's crazy because we talked to one of the members of the Alliance of Evil, and they told us that actually you hired them. But he says that is not true at all. We got word that the Alliance of Evil was also trying to collect the same kind of genetic material that we are creating here in our labs. And so we realized that sooner or later, the Alliance will come here and try to steal our project. That is why we hired the New Warriors to protect this place. So now Cable and the rest of X-Force, they just realized they got played by the Alliance of Evil, which means, hey, you know what? Let's go back to the prison and talk to them one more time. And maybe this time they'll give us the right information. But now we have to check in with Harness and Piecemeal. Now the last time we saw them was back in Niagara Falls, where they had Piecemeal collect another piece of that genetic material. But apparently that was a while back, because when we do jump back over to them, we see that Piecemeal must have collected a huge amount of the material because now he's bigger in weight. And so we see him begging Harness to just stop because this man cannot take any more. But for Harness, they don't care at all. They say, continue. We're now here in Alaska because there is another piece of that material that you have to collect. So go ahead and do your job. We have a job to complete here. And so once again, we see Piecemeal being able to collect another piece of this genetic material. Now for X-Force in the New Warriors, they have split up into 3 teams. And so when it comes to the first team, they went over to the prison that the Alliance of Evil were assigned to. And so we see our heroes break out Frenzy. Now at first, she truly believes that our heroes are there to break her out, to help her out. But you then have Cable say, no, I'm not here to break you out. I'm here to ask you more questions because you lied to me last time. And so this time you better give me the truth or you are going to die. And so you have Frenzy tell the team like, okay, listen, the people who truly did hire us is actually AIM. Now let's not forget that earlier we saw a company known as IDIC be the ones who claimed that they hired the Alliance of Evil. But in reality, that's a fake name, a shell company. The real people in charge of the Alliance is AIM. And so now our heroes know who they have to go after. But here's the thing though. You have Cable say, give me a location of one of their compounds. And so you have Frenzy being able to hand over that piece of information. Now, for the second team, they do arrive at the location the first team learned about from Frenzy. Now, for the second team, when they do arrive at that location, they do find that AIM was working on some kind of containment ceiling device shaped in a way of a human. And so that tells us that when it comes to the Alliance of Evil, Harness, and also Piecemeal, the reason why they were collecting that genetic material was to put that material in this human-shaped containment ceiling device. And the question is right now, are they trying to create a new kind of robot? And so for our heroes, they're kind of wondering what else could AIM be up to when it comes to this project. Now, the rest of our heroes, the third and final team, they went over to the sub-basement to Charles Xavier School. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, it was the last base for the New Mutants, but they had left the place, and the rest of the school got blown up back in X-Men Inferno. Now, when it comes to our heroes, they want to use Cerebro as a way to cross-reference all the information that they have received from Gentech. Now, here is the big thing. So as we know, the Alliance of Evil, they were going around collecting different pieces of this genetic material. But here's the catch though. All those different pieces came from somewhere else before arriving at those different locations. They all came from Muir Island. And so now the third team has to take that info and tell the rest of the teams what they had just learned. And we do get another moment where we see Harness and we also see Piecemeal going out of their way to collect another piece of that genetic material. Really, it's more Harness saying, you are going to do what I asked you to do here, Piecemeal, so go ahead and absorb another piece of that genetic material. But here's the problem though. Once again, we see that he has gotten bigger and bigger when it comes to weight. And so it's kind of telling us that sooner or later, he will be unable to absorb any more of that material. So once you have all three teams being able to come back together as one big team, you then have Cable realize something very important here. He wants to know, when did all these different pieces break apart from one another? And so you then have our heroes come to find out that it happened back on October 13th, 1987. Now for Cable, that is a very important date. And the reason why? Because that is the same day the X-Men had fought against Proteus, the son to Moira McTaggart. Around this time in Marvel Comics, he was kind of known as the most powerful mutant on the planet. The dude had the ability to warp reality around him. And so for Cable, he's kind of like, oh my God, they're going out of their way to collect the different pieces of Proteus to bring him back to life. and to possibly use them for their own evil scheme. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Kings of Pain, the next crossover that we are talking about on my channel for the X-Men. Now, when it comes to Kings of Pain, it was a crossover that was done over in the annuals for Marvel Comics around this time. 3 of the annuals were X titles, and one of them being a New Warriors annual. Now, with that being said, so far we had learned that there were 2 different companies working for 2 mysterious people to bring back a certain character, and that character is no other than Proteus. Now, Proteus is a very powerful character, and so let me explain. So when it comes to Proteus, his real name is Kevin McTaggart. He is the son to another character known as Moira McTaggart. Now, here's the thing. There have been a lot of retcons done on this character over the years in Marvel Comics. And I'm not going to sit down and try to explain all those different kinds of retcons for the sake of this video. So all we know right now is he is the son to Moira McTaggart. Now, when it came to Kevin, when he was young, he did gain his mutant ability, but that was the beginning of the downfall. So once he did gain his mutant ability, it began to, well, burn out his body. Now, before we dive deeper into his origin, I want to say that when it comes to Kevin, he has the ability to warp reality around him, making him a very powerful mutant. But like I said though, once he did gain his mutant ability, well, unfortunately, it began to burn out his body. And so Moira McTaggart had to lock up Kevin in a special kind of cell to keep him alive just long enough until she was able to find a way to save her son. Unfortunately, there was a battle between the X-Men and Magneto. Now, because of that battle, his cell got damaged. And so because of that, he was able to walk free again. But here comes the big problem. You see, that cell was keeping his body alive. And so when the cell got damaged, his body completely died. And so he had to find a new host. And that kind of told us that when it comes to Proteus, he's kind of like this source of energy floating around looking for the next host to keep him alive. And so in the original story that he appeared in, we saw him going to body, hoping to find the right body to keep him alive long enough so that he is able to rejoin society. But that's the problem though. His powers just kept burning every single body that he would find. Now the story did end with Colossus being able to kill off Proteus because one of his weaknesses is metal. And so once you had Colossus being able to kill off Proteus, we were left to believe that he was gone forever. But Kings of Pain changed that. See, we kind of find out that after Colossus had supposedly defeated Proteus, Proteus did not die. His energy body was just broken into many pieces across the world. Now, there were 2 companies who were trying to bring Proteus back to life. One of those companies we can totally forget about because by this point, they're no longer really important for the sake of the story. And so now we can focus on AIM, one of the 2 companies that was trying to bring Proteus back to life. You see, when it came to AIM, they realized if you are able to go around the world to find those different pieces of Proteus and actually put him back together, but also put him inside a containment suit, then Proteus could come back to life. And that was AIM's goal. But also AIM was planning to use Proteus to control him. And if they had that power to control him, they'll be unbeatable because again, Proteus has the ability to warp reality around him, making him one of the most powerful mutants in the world. And so right now you have X-Force and New Warriors freaking out. And they said, listen, if they're trying to bring back Proteus, we have to tell Moira McTaggart. And so they went over to Muir Island. Now, there is something else we do have to talk about, but luckily we can talk about that thing as we dive into the opening pages of today's story, and that would be Moira McTaggart. Now, you see, when it came to Moira, in the earlier story arcs of our coverage on the X-Men, she has been acting different, more aggressive a lot of times, and sometimes more happy than usual. And so for our heroes on the X-Men, the main X-Men team, they begin to realize that Moira McTaggart is not her usual self. Now, let's not forget that when it came to Moira McTaggart, around this time in Marvel Comics, she had her own X-Men team that she had put together on the island as well. But here's the thing. They're also not acting normal either. And the question is right now, why? Now, when it came to the earlier story arcs, we did get a few hints on who could most likely be in control of those characters. This book right here, it flat out tells us who is controlling Moira McTaggart and her X-Men. It is the Shadow King. And here is the reason why it's so important, because you have X-Force and the New Warriors arrive to her island to inform her like, hey, AIM is trying to bring back your son. We need to work together. Except she's not answering their calls. And so when X-Force and the New Warriors get close to her island, she turns on her defense system to basically get rid of them. Now, you do have our heroes try their best to get rid of those weapons, but then you have Moira walk out with her X-Men to get into a battle with our heroes. Now, that battle does last for a few pages, but after a while, you didn't have Cable saying, stop, or I'll shoot you. Like, stop right now, or I shoot you. I came here for a good reason. I came to tell you that AIM is trying to bring back your son, Kevin. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to AIM, they're trying to put Proteus back together. And so what they did was they hired two characters known as Harness and Piecemeal. And so Piecemeal has the ability to absorb the different pieces of Proteus into his body. And so because of Piecemeal, they're going to be able to actually bring Proteus back to life. And so we continue to see Piecemeal being used as a way to absorb all the different pieces of Proteus. Now, he is being controlled by Harness. Now, we don't know much about these two characters, but these last two chapters are going to give us the ability to learn more about them, especially Harness. And here is the reason why. So while you have Piecemeal going out of his way to collect another piece of Proteus, well, you have Harness saying, you know, I own you. You're mine, inside and out. And so we're kind of left to believe that they're very close to one another in some kind of way, possibly being his mother, a very evil mother. Now, getting back over to our heroes, we do see X-Force and the New Warriors being able to catch Moira McTaggart up to speed, and her X-Men as well, to say, hey, this is what happened so far in this story, and so now you know, do you want to help us to stop AIM before they are able to bring your son back to life? Now, for Moira McTaggart, she's very upset about the idea that AIM is trying to bring her son back to life and most likely use him for their own personal gain. And so yes, you have Moira McTaggart agree to work with X-Force and the New Warriors to stop AIM, and that includes her X-Men team as well. Now, while you have all three teams talking to one another, well, they get a call from WHO. Now, WHO stands for Weird Happening Organization. They go around the world to investigate weird things happening in the world. And so right now, they're calling up our heroes saying, hey, listen, we just saw two characters, one in an armor suit and a young boy getting bigger and bigger, like he's been eating too much. Yeah, they're over here. Can y'all go there and check it out for us, please? And so our heroes now know it's Harness and Piecemeal, and they gotta go. Now, we do get a quick page to remind us that there are two mysterious men who have been working in the shadows, and we still have no idea who they are, but when it comes to Gentech, AIM, Harness, Piecemeal, all these different characters, they're being controlled technically by these two guys. They're playing a game against each other to see who will be able to actually pull off this master scheme of bringing back Proteus. But either way, they're playing chess with all of our different characters so far. Now, the rest of this chapter is really more of our heroes working together to stop Harness, but to find a way to save Piecemeal as well. Now, I want to shift our focus onto Harness, and here is the reason why. So when it comes to Harness, she has the ability to use this energy rod as a whip or use it as a leash. Hence the name Harness. Now, the rest of her weapons, they all come from her armor suit that she wears. But anyways, you do have our heroes trying their best to bring her down, while you have other heroes trying their best to save Piecemeal. Now, I'm going to skip over a few pages. And the reason why, because most of those pages are just really, seeing our heroes trying to bring down Harness, but trying to save Piecemeal. I want to get the good point of this chapter where we see our heroes realize that Piecemeal has absorbed too many pieces of Proteus. And so it does seem like this kid, this young boy, might actually die here. He might actually explode. And technically he does. But he doesn't die right there. You see, because he did absorb so many pieces of Proteus, you have the two young boys, Proteus and also Piecemeal, combined into one being, giving birth to a new Proteus, better known as Proteus 2. So yes, Proteus has returned. And for our heroes, this is a huge problem, because now you are talking about the idea of one of the most powerful mutants who has the ability to warp reality returning to Marvel Comics. And right now, he is about to cause a whole lot of problems. Now, the last chapter for Kings of Pain was actually an X Factor annual. Now, with this annual, it really does show how powerful Proteus truly is. Because, like I said earlier, this was one of the most powerful mutants around his time in X-Men comics. The man had the ability to warp reality around him. And so, with him being back, but now being combined with Piecemeal, Scotland is no longer looking like, well, Scotland. Right now, Scotland is kind of like a series of geometrical figures all over the place, and they're being used to represent different people or buildings in Scotland. Now, for X Factor, they know that this is Proteus, and they know they have to go deeper and deeper into Scotland to hopefully find him and to hopefully bring him down, because really, other teams out there across the world, they're kind of wondering if they should help out when it comes to something like this right here. You have Excalibur wondering if they should jump in. You have the Avengers wondering if they should jump in. You have other teams out there on standby saying, all right, X Factor, you're saying you got this. Please show us you can. If you can't, we're gonna jump in. Now, once you have X Factor being able to find Proteus at the heart of this whole area, well, they run into a huge problem, which is, well, Proteus. Because, like I said, this man can warp reality around him. And so you have X Factor try to use their different abilities, hoping to actually bring him down. But the problem is, though, Proteus is able to stop their attacks in so many different ways, because again, he's warping reality around them. Now, for Beast, he does learn one big lesson right here. The idea that Proteus is no longer weak to metal, because you have Beast try his best to come from behind, hoping to take down Proteus with some metal gauntlets, and he finds out that does not work anymore. And so you have Proteus just take down the entire team, and then he teleports them into his mind. Now for AIM, they're seeing what's happening right now in Scotland, but this is AIM saying, okay, our plan failed. Like, our goal was to contain Proteus before he was able to come back to full power, but unfortunately our plan failed. So now we're going to back out. Now, some of the members of AIM, they're kind of wondering, hey, what are we going to do with Harness? And they said, listen, if she survives, most likely she'll be arrested. But if she does survive and not arrested, then don't worry. We'll take care of her down the road. But for right now, we got to make sure there's no trail that leads back to us that shows that we were involved in this hot mess. Now, once you have X Factor being able to meet up with X-Force, the New Warriors, the X-Men inside the mind of Proteus, this is where Jean Grey tells us how they're going to be able to stop Proteus. You see, for Jean Grey, she realized when her mind was connected to Proteus' mind, she learned something about him. Now, something else I want to mention is that around this time in X-Men comics, Jean Grey no longer had the ability to be a telepath. So it was really Proteus who was able to connect his mind to her. But either way, with their minds being connected to one another, she learned that Proteus was happy when he was technically quote unquote dead. Let me explain. So when it came to Proteus, when he was defeated by Colossus many years ago, his body did fall apart to all those different pieces across the world. But when his body was like that, he felt nothing. And honestly, that was when he was the happiest, because let's not forget, before that, he was locked away in a cell because of Moira McTaggart, because she believed that she'll be able to find a cure for him. But also, we cannot forget that this new body we're seeing right now is not just Proteus, it's also Piecemeal as well. And Piecemeal was being abused by his mother, Harness. Oh, by the way, Harness is his mother. Fun fact right there. And so that is why she was so big on him getting all that power, because she wanted to control that power as well for herself. Either way, she abused her son. And so both kids right now are crying out for help in the idea that they no longer want to be around. But here comes the problem though. Proteus is just too powerful for our heroes to kill off, which means they have to convince Proteus to actually kill himself to give him what he wants. The idea of finally being free to feel nothing. Now, for our heroes, they do realize that they do have more options than one. Like, yes, when it comes to Proteus, most likely the world is better off without him because how powerful he truly is. But at the same time, Proteus wants to feel nothing. But you did have our heroes say, let's not forget that AIM had built a containment suit that could be used to give Proteus a new life in this world and give us a chance to show him a better life than he had the last time when he was around. A better life than what Moira McTaggart gave him. A better life than what Harness gave Piecemeal. Because again, Piecemeal and Proteus, they're combined into one. And technically right now, both mothers in their mind have done a horrible job. Now for me personally, I say Moira McTaggart did a bad job, yes, but not completely as bad as, Piecemeal's mom, Harness. Either way, it's our hero saying, let's give Proteus the options for himself to choose. Like, we can't choose for him. It's up to him. But that's the problem, though. Proteus can't decide what he wants to do. And it all comes down to Moira McTaggart, because she was able to talk to her son and say, listen, I understand that what you've gone through in your past was horrible, but honestly, the best option for you to finally be happy again is to go ahead and kill yourself, commit suicide. And so with Proteus, he also realized that she is right. And so with that, we see Proteus die at the end of the story. Now, the very last page does show us who were the two characters in charge this entire time when it came to Kings of Pain. Now, the first one to me personally made sense. It was Gideon. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, Gideon was still a very new character. We were still learning more about this character. But the other one, well, it's Toad. Now, for me personally, I didn't like the idea of Toad being this other mysterious character in the shadows. But I do understand why they used this character for, because in the past, Toad was always used by other people for their own schemes. And so for the first time, it was time for Toad to be the one to use other people for his schemes. And so at the end of the book is Toad saying that he loves the idea of being in charge, being able to control other people for his own personal scheme. And so with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.